By the late 1970s, most American cars had lost their edge. Big engines were shrinking, convertibles were disappearing, and luxury? It started to feel kind of boring. But then Buick said, let's try something different. In 1979, they brought out a brand new Riviera. It was smaller, sleeker, front-wheel drive, and unlike anything Buick had built before. But Buick didn't stop there. A few years later, they did the unthinkable. They brought back the convertible, just when everyone thought it was gone for good. Then came the Riviera XX, with a name that sounded like a top-secret experiment and looks to match. And just when people stopped paying attention, Buick rolled out a turbocharged pace car and took it to the Indy 500. Yeah, that Buick. This generation of the Riviera was bold, stylish, and full of surprises. And yet, most people barely remember it. So what happened? Why did this sleek and risky Riviera fade into the background? Let's rewind the clock and take a ride in the Buick that refused to play it safe. The name Riviera had been around since the 60s. It meant class, power, and big, bold style. But by the end of the 70s, things were changing fast. Gas was expensive, cars were shrinking, and flashy muscle wasn't cool anymore. It was risky. So in 1979, Buick did something bold. They completely redesigned the Riviera. It was smaller, sharper, and for the first time ever, front-wheel drive. That move alone was huge. This was a luxury coupe that suddenly handled more like a European cruiser than an old-school land yacht. It still had smooth lines and a plush interior. But it wasn't trying to be your grandpa's car anymore. It was built for a new kind of buyer. Someone who wanted comfort, but with a little attitude too. The move worked. Sales were strong. Buick had found a way to stay classy while adapting to a new era. But Buick wasn't done yet, because just a few years later, they pulled off something nobody saw coming. In the early 80s, one thing was clear: convertibles were basically dead. Between safety fears, tighter rules, and shrinking demand, most carmakers gave up on drop-tops altogether. But not Buick. In 1982, Buick shocked everyone by bringing the Riviera Convertible back to life. And this wasn't just a roofless version of the regular coupe. This was a hand-built, limited-edition luxury machine. To make it happen, Buick partnered with a company called ASC, American Sunroof Company. They took regular Riviera coupes and carefully transformed them into full convertibles, reinforcing the body, reshaping the roof, and adding a power-operated soft top. The result? A car that looked classy, felt exclusive, and cost a small fortune. We're talking over $24,000 back in the early 80s, more than a Cadillac Eldorado at the time. That price meant it wasn't for everyone. And that was the point. Only a few thousand were made over the next few years, making it one of the rarest Riviera variants ever built. But here's the fun part. Buick wasn't done showing off, because while the convertible was making heads turn, Buick was quietly working on something even flashier. If the regular Riviera was smooth and the convertible was rare, then the Riviera XX was something else entirely. This wasn't just a car, it was a fashion statement. Released in 1983, the Riviera XX, that's 20 for the 20th anniversary of the model, was built to celebrate 2 decades of Riviera style. And wow, style was the name of the game. It came in only one color, a sharp silver and black combo with deep red pinstripes. The interior? Soft gray leather with red piping and special XX logos stitched into the seats. Even the steering wheel had a custom look. Only 500 of these were ever made. No extra power under the hood, no special exhaust note. This was all about presence. When you pulled up in a Riviera XX, people knew you were driving something rare. It wasn't loud. It didn't scream for attention. It just looked expensive and confident. And in a time when many American cars were starting to blur together, the XX stood out without even trying. But as bold as it was, there was still one Riviera that pushed even harder. It didn't just look special, it had the power to back it up. And Buick didn't just put it in showrooms, they put it on a racetrack. If you think the Riviera was just about style and comfort, think again. In 1983, Buick gave the Riviera something it hadn't really had in years: speed. That year, they rolled out a special pace car edition for the Indianapolis 500. Yeah, that's right. The Riviera got to pace the most famous race in America. And this wasn't just a pretty paint job with decals. Buick meant business. Under the hood was a turbocharged 3.8-liter V6, the same kind of setup that would later power the legendary Grand National. It wasn't some race-ready monster, but it gave the Riviera something new: attitude. The pace car also had a bold look, unique graphics, badging, and a slightly more aggressive stance. It still kept that Riviera smoothness, but now it had a little bite behind the smile. Only a very limited number of pace car replicas were ever made for the public, and most people have completely forgotten this version even existed. But for a brief moment, the Riviera wasn't just cruising, it was leading the pack, literally. That pace car showed what the Riviera could have become, a real mix of luxury and performance. But after 1985, the excitement faded. The convertible was gone. The special editions stopped coming, and by the late 80s, the Riviera had quietly slipped back into the background. Still, this sixth generation had already made its mark, quietly, confidently, and with a few bold surprises along the way. Because even when the crowd wasn't watching, Buick still knew how to take a risk. By the late 1980s, the fire was cooling off. The Riviera was still around, but the magic was slipping. No more convertibles, no more special editions, just a nice quiet coupe doing its best to keep up in a changing market. The turbocharged pace? Gone. The bold styling? Fading. The attention? Somewhere else. But even as it drifted into the background, the sixth-gen Riviera had already done something important. It proved Buick could take risks, that the brand could be stylish, fast, even daring, without giving up its luxury roots. It brought back the convertible when nobody else would. It threw a turbo V6 into a full-size cruiser, and it showed up at Indy like it belonged there. That's not nothing. Today, these Rivieras don't always get the spotlight, but to the people who know, they're unforgettable. Because every so often, Buick didn't just build cars. They built moments. Moments that said, we can be bold too. Moments that turned heads. Quietly, but confidently. And for just a few short years, the Riviera wasn't following trends. It was setting them. The 1979 to 1988 Riviera wasn't perfect. It wasn't the fastest, or the flashiest. But it tried, and in all the right ways. It brought back forgotten ideas, took chances when other brands played it safe, and proved that even in slow times, Buick could still surprise people. The Riviera wasn't just a luxury coupe, it was a reminder that bold moves don't always make headlines, but they do make history. But if Buick's story surprised you, wait till you see what Ford did when they dropped a V8 into a tiny European coupe. Click here to discover the V8 Capri, one of the wildest muscle moves Europe never saw coming.